This is Strange New Trek, a podcast about the life and times of Captain Christopher Pike. And now your hosts. Space. Space is disease and danger wrapped in darkness and silence. Sometimes it's full of ghosts and secrets as well. This week we're talking about episode 3 of Strange New Worlds, Ghosts of Illyria. I'm your host, Jeremy Vilmur. Somewhere around here is Commander Dog. And joining us now is our chief engineer, Chris Noonien-Singh. What's happening, Chris?
What's up, man?
Oh, same old stuff. Just trying to stay on schedule.
I am reporting for duty sober today, sir.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. I'm kind of wishing I wasn't, but, there's always later, I guess. So, Chris, we're going to talk about the third episode, Ghosts of Illyria. Anything you want to bring up about it before we delve into it, though?
You know what? There is. So, it just struck me watching this today. What the Planet of the Week type thing is missing for me. Yes, character storylines, they get moved forward, but at a snail's pace, it seems like so far. No, there was some reveals this week, which I was definitely not expecting. But other than that, it does feel like the old TOS episodes. I'll give them that. So they definitely still, even 3 episodes in, succeed with that feeling. But given the fact that I am living in 2022, it seems super weird that they would stick with that as tightly as they do. Now, somebody like you, I know you appreciate that about this show. And I do too, to a certain extent, but I still feel like there should be, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know, especially with this one, things just felt a little off to me.
Okay. Now, see, I would say that for me, this show seems to, so far, again, we're 3 episodes in, so we don't really know, but it seems to do a really good job and kind of perfect the episodic feel.
No, it definitely does that really well, for sure.
It knows where the story beats need to be. It knows where the act breaks are. It knows where the tension needs to come up. It knows where to break it down. And the other thing I like is they edit for content and not length. So if you've only got 42 minutes worth of story, you're getting a 42-minute story.
Yeah.
They don't stretch it out. They don't, they don't play around,
Which, to be fair, my problem with it is my own problem, not exactly with the show. The show has thus far delivered on exactly what it promised us it would.
Yeah.
So the problem is mainly with me, not with the show.
It's me, show, not you.
Yep.
I think we should watch other TV programs. Well, so this week we start again with Una, which I was a little shocked by. I thought we were going to get a different character at the beginning of each show. So, I mean, I shouldn't have shocked, but I was surprised. I was expecting something else.
Well, Discovery suffers from this, right? The main focus is obviously on Michael, but they have such a wide variety of characters on the bridge that they could throw an episode out here or there featuring them. And they have done a couple here and there. One of the ones that I can think of off the top of my head, I don't is that her name? They kind of, Michael was still with her, but, those two were the main focus while they were following Tarka and Book around trying to foil their plans. So that was cool, but it definitely, the show so far, and again, I get where the 3 episodes in, but it does suffer from that same thing Discovery suffers from, where they just 2 or 3 characters, maybe 4, are the main focus of the whole thing, even though they have a cool cast of characters around them. Like, I would like to know more about Detmer. I would like to know more about some of the other communications people on the bridge, stuff like that, but they don't really ever touch on it. Now, granted, Detmer does get her backstory filled way more comparatively to the rest of the bridge crew.
Well, but what's funny about Detmer, I didn't even know that character's name till season 2, and I just looked at her, I go, who's the cute girl with the shaved head? What's her name? I didn't remember ever having heard it, and I had to look it up. Yeah, I do kind of see what you mean about that. Like, Next Gen really focused on, 7 characters.
Yeah, most of the bridge people.
Yeah, and then occasionally you'd get a Barclay.
Oh, gosh. I remember that one.
Yeah. which were fun little diversions, but, they had to do like 28 episodes a season back then, not 10 or whatever it is,
Yeah, that's fair.
And to be fair, original Star Trek, you had a star and then 2 backups to them.
Yeah, I mean, but that's kind of how TV was back then.
Yeah,
I don't begrudge TOS for that. That's just how things were back then. But in this era of streaming, you got no excuse.
Well, yeah, it feels different. It feels archaic in a way.
It does. I mean, hopefully moving forward, they will put some focus elsewhere. Although, I mean, I guess the first episode kind of centered around Una, but Una wasn't in a majority of the episode. Last episode focused around Uhura. So maybe I'm complaining about something that's not an issue yet, at all.
Again, we're 3 episodes in. It took Next Gen three almost full seasons to find its leggings. Here we're 3 episodes. We'll give it some time. Did you want to read the voiceover going into the episode?
First Officer's Log, Stardate 1224.3. The Enterprise has arrived at Hediment 9, the site of an abandoned Illyrian colony. Illyrians are a humanoid species known for modifying their genes to enhance their capabilities and levels of function. However, because genetic modification is forbidden in the Federation, they have always been outcasts. Our presence here is part of a standing mission to discover what happened to them. Unfortunately, research time on the surface is limited as the planet is regularly swept by ion storms, one of which is fast approaching. When I first heard her say that, I was obviously thinking that the focal point would be on La'an.
Yes.
But I was wrong.
Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing. Apparently, the Illyrians were from an episode of Enterprise. Now, I don't know how well fleshed out they were or anything, because I didn't really watch Enterprise. Apparently, the crew of the Enterprise stole an Illyrian's warp core and left him to die, I guess. Just doing some quick cursory reading. So it is a alien species we've seen before. Yeah, I was thinking we were going to be looking at some Khan type stuff here.
To be fair, he was mentioned, but it turns out that
Una has a secret. And it's not just about her fooling around on John Stamos with the kid from Stand By Me,
Which one?
Will Whedon? Jerry O'Connell is the guy she dumped John Stamos for.
Oh, I just read an interview earlier where she said, there's some things I miss about John Stamos.
Yeah. She dumped him for the fat kid from Stand By Me, who is also the first officer on Lower Decks.
Oh, yeah.
So the Enterprise is in orbit around Hediment 9, a colony of or an abandoned colony from the Illyrians. So apparently we're sticking with this genetic engineering rather than eugenics point of view thing. The command crew all appear to be down on the planet, and there's a storm approaching. They're trying to get beamed up. They have a little trouble getting beamed up, and then Kyle works her way through, but Spock and Pike are left behind. So this is kind of a and B story setup we've got going on here, I imagine.
Yeah, but I don't know if you consider the A story of what's going on the ship and the B story of what's going on the surface. The B story doesn't get a lot of traction, except for a few key points.
Nope, it really just kind of keeps a couple people busy. Oh, we missed one of the guys that was in the landing party. He was acting funny about a flashlight. So Hammer is having to use some emergency backup power to pull everybody up because Kyle was having trouble getting them through. So that's how they get them through. And Kyle's like, well, how did you do that? And Hammer's like, well, I'm a genius, which is kind of a fun line. Inside one of the laboratories where Pike and Spock are, they start to catch up with each other. And they find a bunch of journals below that Spock really wants to read. But the whole thing was kind of off here. That's what kept them from getting there on time, was that Spock was going through a bunch of journals they wanted to read. So basically once Una realizes that the rest of the team, but not Spock and Pike, have beamed up, she tells them to go and find shelter because the storm's going to catch them. And that is the end of it, going into that act break. I kind of went around the block across the street there, I guess. All right, so from the bridge, Una explains to everybody that Pike and Spock are left behind. She asks Uhura if she can get a signal to the surface. Uhura reports a storm as a communications blackout, and she can't. Una tells her to inform her immediately once she's able to communicate with the captain. To Lieutenant Wheeler at the science station, who's filling in for Spock, Una orders around-the-clock sensor sweeps and also wants Chief Kyle on standby with the transporter. I believe Wheeler was the guy who acted funny about the flashlight. Not that we need to keep track of that for any reason. So roaming around on Deck 14, Lieutenant Ortegas finds Ensign... Oh, no, it wasn't Wheeler, it was Lance, that's right. Ortegas finds Ensign Lance removing his uniform and staring at a wall console.
Yeah, I was just looking at the bridge, and I was like, hey, man, where the hell's Ortegas at? And then the next scene was like, there she is.
Yeah, she had to go for a walk, you know? He thinks the ship is too dark, and he begins to rub his face up against one of the light panels in the corridor. He says he wants to feel the light on his skin, and Ortegas is kind of like, hey, dude, you okay? She kind of just, keeps going to go past him. And then he smashes his head through the glass panel. And
yeah, that was crazy, man.
Yeah, Ortegas calls for security. Una, we cut back to her in her quarters, and she's having a similar effect, and she even tears open her shirt, James T. Kirk style. Her skin begins to glow red.
Like she's infected with extremis.
Yes, that's basically exactly what it looked like.
Right.
Yeah. But she starts to glow and kind of like snaps back to normal. She realizes something wrong, calls down to Dr. Mbinga, asking about the status of the landing party. Mbinga reports that there are several members of the party in sickbay right now, and he was just about to call her. While she assures him that she herself is fine, the doctor asks her to come to sickbay anyway just to be sure. As she heads out, she looks at herself in the mirror and kind of looks worried. I assume she takes time to change her shirt.
Yeah, it didn't look like the ripped one when she got down to sickbay.
Yeah. So, Chris, one time I was getting ready to fly back to California from Vancouver, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get claustrophobia, but I'd never gotten it on an airplane. But then they read an announcement that, hey, we're going to have to sit on the tarmac for about an hour before we can take off. And all I could think to myself was, it is so hot in here, I can't breathe. But I bet you if I stand up, get in the aisle, take off all my clothes, and run back and forth, I'll feel fine.
So what happened?
I just kind of sat there and chilled and then ordered a whiskey, and then we were up in the air in about 15 minutes.
No, I thought you were about to say I got kicked off the flight for... No,
but that was my backup plan. Was if I didn't cool off, they'd kick me off the plane, and I'd be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand how Lance was feeling in the scene. I get it completely because, sometimes you just want to do something irrational. Okay, so Nurse Chapel's attending some of the others while Mbinga talks to Una about what he's seen. Half the landing party have burned or shocked themselves on light sources, and yet the light is the only thing calming them down. Something is attracting them to light, like moths, basically, and they will go through anything to get to the light. When Mbinga asks if she has experienced a symptom, Una lies to him and says that she hasn't.
Yeah, he should have caught that.
Yeah, well...
Like, it was fairly clear she was not being truthful with him.
Yeah. You know what, though? I'm starting to think Mbinga might have other things on his mind. He might be...
Well, you find out later that maybe he had.
Yes. So maybe he's not paying attention like he should be. She asked if there were any signs of contagion, but the biofilters in the transporter should have caught that. So
yeah, I remember Hammer. I don't know if it's right here or a little later, but he's like, it absolutely can't be the transporters. Yeah, they would catch that, just like a maintenance dude. Like, nah, man, this is my stuff. Yeah. I know it's not that. It can't be.
So the doctor says he ran viral and bacterial scans anyways and found nothing. The only thing he detected was a severe drop in vitamin D levels. If not for that and their aberrant behavior, no one would have guessed that anything was wrong at all. He shows Una's vitamin D levels to be about normal, but suggests taking a blood sample in any case. She's hesitant for some reason, but agrees. And Mbinga expresses the hope that the captain and Spock, still on the surface, have not been exposed to whatever this is, thinking that the landing party came into contact with something on the surface that the biofilters missed. In engineering, Una brings this possibility up to him, or here it is.
Yeah, this is the scene.
Who dismisses it as nonsense. The biofilters would have removed any contamination during the transport. Unless Una suggests it was something they wouldn't be programmed to filter out. Hammer assures her that's impossible, as the transporter would filter out anything it doesn't recognize. She then wonders if the storm could have caused it. Short of turning the landing party into bioorganic stew, Hammer again denies it. Una then suggests that the emergency power could have affected the biofilters, but again, Hammer shoots that down. Sensing her exasperation, he reluctantly agrees to conduct a level 5 diagnostic scan of the ship's power system, which he grumpily adds would probably take all night. So we go back to the bridge. Una's able to talk to Pike for a moment, and he and Spock are okay, but they're trapped in the library due to the storm. Una begins to explain about what M'Benga has discovered, but before they can get very far into it, the storm interference kicks in again. Going into the conference room, she calls up computer's records on the Illyrian genetic modifications, specifically pertaining to disease control. She then specifies any records pertaining to the original Illyrian settlement on Volterra Nebula.
So this part is a little weird in light of later revelations. I'm not sure why she wants to look at records on those genetic modifications, because she already knows about them.
Well, maybe she doesn't know about them. Maybe she just knows someone who has them. You know? It's like...
That's fair.
It's like, I know my car keys work, but I don't understand how to build an engine. You know?
That's fair.
Yeah. So while she's doing that, La'an enters because she had been called in. Una informs her about the potential contamination brought up from the surface and tells her to have security on the lookout for strange behavior. La'an sees the computer screen's information about the Illyrians, wondering if they were somehow involved. Una tells her she's not sure, she's just doing research. La'an thinks the Illyrian history is one of the reasons why the Federation is wary of genetically modified species. Una thinks that if the Illyrians were behind the problem, they could also provide the solution. But Illyrian medical technology was banned by Federation regulations because of the eugenics wars.
And here is the man himself getting mentioned.
Una knows La'an is all too familiar with that time period. The security chief is a descendant of Khan Noonien-Singh, and La'an admits that one could not have a bioengineered mass murderer for an ancestor without growing a thick skin. She studied Khan extensively as a child, and thought the worst of it would be being bullied by other children. La'an suddenly expresses similar symptoms to the landing party, saying the room was too dark. Una immediately calls him M'Benga. So, Khan is a known person here.
Yeah.
And if we flash back to Space Seed, everybody's a little unsure about him there. Now, Spock didn't know anything about him, which I find interesting. I don't know if this is going to be some kind of soft papering over of history, you know, like we kind of just don't worry about that.
I mean, it has to be.
Or is this something that Spock, since he was raised on Vulcan, really doesn't know a lot about, and he and La'an don't hang out and talk, so he didn't get any of this info from her?
They have already kind of ran past that. I don't think they're doing much tiptoeing around it right now.
Well, in Space Seed, Kirk, McCoy, and Scotty know the name, and Scotty even says he always had an admiration for this one, because there were no purges and, no great humanitarian abuses. And then Spock's all like, what are you guys talking about?
I guess at some point, though, it's really number one that knows about her specifically. Yeah. I mean, obviously, people know her last name, so it's not super...
You know what I did notice? They were calling her on Noonien.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I wonder why.
So maybe they don't bring up the Singh. Maybe they don't really talk about that. And I also find it interesting now that we know that Data's creator's family was involved, and they were the Noonien-Singhs. I don't know how twisted it's going to get, and I'm afraid Khan's going to become way more important in Star Trek history than he needs to be. But they got a lot of balls in the air with Khan right now.
Well, I wouldn't say more important to Star Trek as a whole. I would say more important to the Enterprise and crew. He's a known entity. I mean, it could be... I seem to remember, them doing the research on the ship name, knowing who Khan was. It's been such a long time. I should probably watch this episode, soon, so I can...
Yeah.
So I can see, how it all unfolds, because it's been so long.
Space Seed's an episode I've watched a number of times, but yeah, it's probably been a couple of years since I've seen it.
Yeah, it seems like they didn't really recall the ship, but once they found out it was Khan, he seemed like a known entity. Had to be, though, because he was kind of one of the leaders in the eugenics war, so they would have known who he was, now that I'm really thinking about this.
Well, yeah, it'd be like finding, a submarine with cryogenic chambers, and there's an A. Hitler on board, You'd be like, huh. Even though I'm not a historian who specializes in World War II, this seems familiar. Yeah, I just, Khan was brought up kind of poignantly in Picard this season. And he's definitely, they've got something going with him here, absolutely.
Yeah, that seems, again, I haven't watched Picard yet, but I obviously need to, it seems like. But it seems weird that they're mentioning him on Picard because Picard happened so much later than the original series and even the movie.
There's some shenanigans in this season.
Well, I wonder if they're just kind of retconning some things, which again takes me to it's the same problem I had with them introducing Khan into the second Kelvin movie.
Right.
Like, why? Why are we revisiting this character?
Ricardo Montalban, he was a scenery chewer as Khan, but he was so good in that role, I don't necessarily want to see somebody else play it.
No, and it was super weird seeing a white English guy play him. Dude, you know what? I just recalled this. If you remember during Space Seed, Khan avoids telling them his name for a while.
Yes, he does.
So that tells me that they would obviously know who the hell he is. So, yeah, I don't even know why that just popped in my head.
Yeah. But well, and remember, MacGyver's was even painting a portrait of him because she had already figured it out, but she was keeping it to herself as well. Uhura wakes up in her sleep cubicle, which, by the way, did you like the bunk situation in the cadet rooms?
I mean, that's kind of how a submarine bunk room looks, except it's way bigger, obviously. But, yeah. I mean, even on an aircraft carrier, they look similar to that, where you can get in your bed and close the curtain or whatever.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting, especially after we've now seen that the captain's quarters are the size of a large studio apartment.
Yeah, to be fair, though, Uhura's, even if that's her only quarters, quote unquote, it's still way bigger than the modern counterparts.
Oh, sure.
Way bigger.
Yeah. No, I got you. And I always thought when I watched the original Star Trek as a kid, people down around the lieutenant level probably had to stay in rooms where there was 3 bunk beds, So it was just kind of cool to see the room split into cubicles for cadets.
Yeah.
It was just kind of cool to see them kind of keep that idea around.
Something I did notice about this episode, though, the Enterprise seems to have more activity on it. There was more people walking around, and, obviously we saw Uhura's kind of living area with a couple other, not really roommates, but, bunk mates or whatever.
The ship feels more lived in.
Yeah.
Than I would say any version except, I don't know, maybe the Next Generation usually did a pretty good job of having some stuff going on in the background.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and then TOS, the time we watched The Cage and talked about it, besides the, Gidget and Moondoggy who were on their way to the beach, you really didn't see a whole lot happening in the corridors on Pike's Enterprise at that point.
TOS as a whole was kind of like that. I mean, Occasionally, on the naked time where everybody's intoxicated, which this episode kind of reminds me of a little bit. But you kind of see people bouncing around the ship there too, but it's not very often that you see that.
No, you really don't see that a whole lot. And to really show activity on TOS, a lot of times what they do is Kirk would say something and then everybody on the bridge would run around. And that was there's a lot of activity on the ship. All right, everybody run in a circle. So she wakes up and her bunkmates, she's got a light shield up first off. And she gets a sense of light radiating through the closed door. She opens it up, finds members of the crew standing around a simulation of the sun. And she tells the computer to end the simulation. The 2 crewmen demand to know what she's done. So they got the sun monkey on their back, They need that light, So now we can tell that the contagion is spreading. 50 members of the crew are now in sickbay, forcing Mbinga to open up the auxiliary bay to handle the overflow. Chapel says that the contract tracing was all over the place. Some were getting it from being down the hall from an infected person. Meanwhile, Uhura appeared to be just fine, despite her direct contact with 2 infected crewmen. Just then, Hammer enters, and Una asks if he found anything. The ANR engineer sarcastically replies that of course he had, because he wandered the ship in the middle of the night running diagnostics for fun. He returns to business. He tells Mbinga that he needs to run a check on the emergency medical transporter for excess power use. And Mbinga starts to act a little suspicious here.
I mean, at first I didn't think much of it. because I was like, well, this is his sick bay. Like, you're over here, like, opening up panels and stuff. I guess I get it.
Yeah, don't
at this time.
Stuff. This is delicate medical equipment. And then, Mbinga says something about him making it worse. Hammer, to the point taken, he seems a little grumpy about it, and he kind of bounces. Mbinga turns lights back on, but then, if you watch, he very surreptitiously reaches behind him and hits something else, it looked like.
I thought that was him turning on the lights.
Was that just the lights? I thought he was doing something else, too. Okay.
No, because if you remember, like, whatever Hammer was doing kind of made the lights dim.
Yeah.
And Hammer was like, man, that shouldn't have happened.
Okay. See, I was having flashbacks to Lando playing with the sides of the Han Solo's frozen coffin thing,
Yeah, I got you.
He's in perfect hibernation as I set the we'll get him out of here soon button. Okay, maybe I was reading too much into it, but the way he backed up against it and slid his hand behind him, I thought he was being kind of tricky,
Well, he was, and that kind of, I feel like that kind of told you, like, maybe since Mbinga is treating all these patients, maybe he's starting to come down with it too. That's what I took from it.
Yeah, okay. See, I didn't even think that direction. I thought he's up to something.
Because then he goes to his desk and like kind of hugs it a weird way, or not hugs it, but he's kind of sprawled out on it with his arms a weird way underneath the lamp on the desk. I don't know. It was super weird.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Okay, so he turns lights back on. Everybody in sickbay is like, oh, thank God. Pike notes that, this is back on the planet. Pike notes that the source of the sound seemed to be gone. Spock's reading of the journals indicates that the colonists there thought there were creatures living in the ion storms, a possibility which appears to have been confirmed. Right then, one of the creatures attempts to enter an open door, but Spock and Spike force it shut. That forced the door shut, not the creature. Spock sustains a light slash to the neck, which was close to hitting where a carotid artery would have been if he were human. Now, he's half human, so is there a half artery there? The creature begins to pound on the door, leading Pike to ask how long the door would hold. Spock suggests weighing probability in their favor, and he appears to have an idea. We cut back over to the quarters that Uhura shared with the two infected crew members. Una asks the cadet to take her through why she was not affected when the others were. Uhura explains that she prefers to sleep in pitch-black conditions, comparing it to the Princess and the Pea. As she demonstrates for herself, Una comes to realization and returns to sickbay. She explains to Mbinga and Chapel that Uhura was exposed to the same contagion, but she had been in the dark. Electromagnetic scans of the ship showed that the contagion seemed to travel through light waves, something Mbinga considers to be both insidious and remarkable. The infection they were dealing with affected the pleasure centers of the brain when close to the light, but light was literally everywhere. Una suggests shutting down the lights all over the ship, but Chapel points out that sickbay was full of light addicts. Una wonders if it would be too intrusive to sedate them all, but given the alternatives, Mbinga was forced to concede on the point. And with that, we go to lights out.
Yeah, it was crazy watching the Enterprise slowly go dark.
Yeah, it's kind of neat now that we have that much control over like ship models where we can actually show that sort of thing happening.
Oh yeah.
Whereas before we just kind of had like areas painted that were made to look like windows.
Yeah, more and more though as this episode goes, it just reminds me of the Naked Time and then the Naked Now from the Next Generation, but obviously it's not the same kind of thing, but just the fact that there's this virus or whatever you want to call it running rampant on the ship and people acting out of character and things.
It actually reminds me of two episodes of the TOS. The Naked Time, obviously, the contagion thing.
Yeah.
Also, there's, one person who just seems like they're not going to be affected while everybody else will. Or, you've got that one person you got to follow until it gets them kind of thing. But there was also an episode, and I can't remember what it was. Was it Galileo 7 or one of the ones where Sulu is stranded on a planet, and if night falls, it's going to get so cold that they'll freeze to death. So they're trying to figure out a way to get the crew back up before everybody freezes to death, but there's like ion interference or some Trek problem, So it kind of feels like two of those things put together to me.
I can see that.
So back in the conference room, Una has the computer narrow the search parameters to Illyrian genetic modifications. The computer warns that they were classified, but Una overrides. Then narrows the parameters further to modifications relating to disease control, which are again classified, and she overrides that. She sees a child patient in the records showing the same red glow to her skin that Una had experienced alone in her quarters. Just then, the computer alerts her to a blackout override in the transporter room. With the added danger of the critical circuit overload, Una calls down the transporter room but receives no response, and so goes down there herself. Himmer's at the controls, having transferred a piece of the planet's mantle. He's got the same symptoms, saying he wants to feel the radiance on his skin. Una sees a phaser on the console and warns that the temperature was more than 1,000 degrees. Himmer gleefully replies it was closer to 10,000 and has almost stabilized the signal. As he approaches it, Una grabs the phaser and stuns him before reversing the beam. Now, here's the thing that caught me off guard. She basically just cleans and jerks his ass right up off the floor and onto her shoulder.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's extremis.
Yeah. And I realized they wanted to do it in a way where you went like, oh, holy smokes, she's really strong, But when you see her just reach down, grab him, and basically just lift him right up on the shoulder and walk out like she's not carrying anything.
Yep.
So now we know that, that I was probably wrong about Leanne and her secret genetic modifications, because they wouldn't do that twice.
Yeah, so what are you thinking, that La'an is not modified, but Una is?
Yeah, that's what I'm...
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking too, especially when they go at it later.
Because they're not going to give us two people in that situation. I thought it was interesting, much like the dummy Kirk. They make you think you know exactly what's coming, right? And then they swerve you a little bit. They put a Noonien-Singh on the ship, so we're already thinking, eugenics. And we're right, but not about her.
Well, to be fair, it's not exactly eugenics. They weren't breeding negative quote-unquote traits out. They were actively changing their DNA.
Which I think Star Trek has lost track of the difference.
Well, they seem to know the difference here.
Well, except that they keep saying that the people who fought the eugenics war were genetically altered.
They were.
They were bred to be like they were. That was the original idea. Now it's been turned over the years into genetic modification, but that's not eugenics.
So if you kind of remember what they said about it in the Space Seed, obviously selective breeding was a part of it, but they still did also do genetic engineering because Khan was strong as shit too.
Oh, back then he was just like twice as strong.
Yeah, but still, though.
Yeah, they talked about like how much blood his heart could pump and all these things, that he could lift a grown man with one hand. He wasn't Captain America yet. Una enters sickbay with Hemmer over her shoulder and tells him Binga and Chapel to sedate him before he recovers from the stun. And Binga reports that he will have to be next. So you're right, he was got the sun monkey too, chasing the shiny dragon. His vitamin levels are also dropping, and now only he and Chapel were left. Una asks about the blood sample M'Benga took earlier, before finally admitting that she was immune to the illness because she was Illyrian. Okay, so I, of course, was a little shocked. Now, we talked about this a little bit, that Una in the novels and the beta canon was sometimes rumored to be non-human or, I believe, like machine augmented and other things. So I had always just assumed that she was human, and that's not the case.
Nope. I don't know, man. This revelation, like we were saying earlier, having La'an on the ship makes you think it's her, but I don't know. It seemed a little underhanded. The revelation of fake Kirk, it was kind of like, aha, yeah, you got me.
Yeah.
But this one, it felt like...
Well, there was no reason to suspect it at all until she gorilla pressed the hammer over her head. That was the only cue I saw to it, right?
Yeah, I didn't put it all together until Act 4 here. But I'm slow like that, so...
Well, yeah.
And it had to be explained to me, so...
Yeah, we can't all guess the whole way, right?
Yeah, that wasn't even part of my thought process, because I was like, oh, they're talking about genetic modifications, got to be Lan. I wasn't even looking for it to be anybody else. I just assumed the stuff happening with Una was just a result of the issues. Now, I did question, like, how are you just loading up Hemmer like he's just a sack of potatoes?
Very light potatoes.
Like it's hardly nothing.
Yeah. As soon as that happened, I was like, I kind of had it there, but when she first lifted him, I was like, holy smokes, what did we miss about her?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, like, oh, okay, I guess she's Captain America.
Yep. So Mbinga and Chapel are adamant that even with that knowledge, they cannot use her blood to help. Going into his office while Chapel attends the awakening patients, Mbinga explains that there were no novel antibodies in Una's blood.
Yeah, and that's the reason why they can't use it, because even Chapel says, like, look, man, if we could use it, I wouldn't care at all what Federation had to say. I'm out here trying to save people, but your blood has nothing in it that we can use.
There's nothing there. Her system did not attack the infection, but literally burnt it out, which is why she was glowing.
Extremis.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Which meant that they had nothing to work with anyways. If he'd been present at the moment of her infection, he could have, but now there's no other option. Una tells him he was a Starfleet doctor and can figure out a way. And Mbinga sees she places a lot of faith in Starfleet, and Una admits that they were right about a lot of things, but not all of them. And Mbinga understands that the prejudice has kept people from helping each other for centuries with no scientific justification, and even after meeting their neighbors in the stars, they found new bigotries. First about mixing human and Vulcan blood, and now human and Illyrian. To Mbinga, that did not matter, as he was a physician. He would beg her to help if she could, regulations be damned. But he knows she can't. He pleads with her to sedate him before he lost control, and reluctantly she does. As the doctor goes unconscious, the computer warns that the containment field generator on the warp core has been deactivated, potentially leading to a warp core breach.
Yeah, because at some point, like in the background, you notice La'an just kind of sitting up, and then when Una turns around, Chapel's on the floor and La'an's gone.
Yep. Chapel's been KTFO'd. La'an is nowhere nearby. And now Una's going to have to rush off and find her. La'an is at the containment field console, bringing down the containment field. Una pleads with her to stop, but La'an is obsessed with flooding the ship with light. They struggle over control of the console, Una pleading with La'an that she knew her and that she was her friend. La'an is really not cool with this because she's all like, you lied to me for years. You're an augment. You're an abomination. And that's what the kids used to call me, and you're one of those.
Yeah, so obviously La'an would have had to have been awake previous to her sitting straight up and hearing that whole conversation.
Yep, and also ruled out they were on a sleeper ship that got found by the Gorn thing.
Yeah, I was looking at that. They were on a Federation generation ship, as they are called.
Yeah, they say what it is in that paper, but I thought that could be because I was expecting them to sneak one in, and she was going to be like an actual member of Khan's family, like an actual augmented or whatever character. I don't think that's anything that's going to happen now.
Well, she is a descendant of his, so that part's still right.
Right. Well, I mean, she's going to have, the genetic traces of it, obviously. But, she's not going to have been, bred for perfection in Captain America.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how all that shook out, because Khan didn't get with anybody until TOS. When they found him in TOS.
Are we sure?
Well, I guess I'm not super sure, because if I remember right, one of the beds was empty on the Botany Bay, and they suspected it might have been a female, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah. Because there were lots of chicks amongst the 72 people that were there. But, I mean, come on, man. You got Ricardo Montalban running around, but he's now super ambitious and a world leader. You think he's not pulling down some chicks? I think he's got a bed made out of rich Corinthian leather that all the ladies are lining up for is what's going on. But, I'm just guessing. So, La'an is really unhappy with Una for having lied to her for all that time. There's a little bit of a kung fu fight, and then Una just knocks her out. But the radiation levels in engineering have grown to the level to be toxic to organic life, causing her Illyrian healing factor to kick in as the computer warns of imminent core breach.
Yeah, and this is that scene that we saw in the trailer that we were trying to figure out what the heck was going on with number one.
Yeah, I do remember that, but not, but it was like a genuine mystery. I had no idea what could be causing her to glow,
Well, there it is.
There it is. Now we cut back to the surface of the planet. The storm appears to have cleared, and Pike again tries to call the Enterprise, but is answered with only static. He thinks it's safe to go outside again and remarks on how the creatures had gone to great lengths to save their lives. If that was the case, why didn't they do so for the colonists? Spock sees two possibilities. Either, one, they were not motivated to save the colonists due to some previous interaction, or two, they were the colonists.
Yep.
Spock had found references to odd behavior relating to the previously mentioned disease. The infected had a compulsion for light, and some were driven to insanity and driven into the storms themselves. Pike wonders if that wouldn't have killed the colonists, and Spock confirms it, though theorizes that the charged particles would have bonded with the colonists' electromagnetic presence, creating what they saw. As they speak, a second record cylinder pops out as if on its own. It is a thorough account of the colonists' effort to renounce their genetic engineering in order to join the Federation. It would seem that even in death, Spock concludes, that they wanted us to be aware of who they really are. As they walk out to the rendezvous point, Spock notices how some Illyrians were bioengineered to fight disease. Had they not tried to reverse their augmentation, they might not have all died. They wanted to join the Federation so badly, their good faith gesture got them killed. Pike agrees grimly. In sickbay, Una brings Mbenga back to consciousness and explains that she had an antidote. Leanne had tried to jump into the warp core, and both were exposed to lethal doses of radiation, but Una's healing ability was able to save them both before she re-engaged the field. Chapel adds that Leanne was not Illyrian, but her proximity to Una created chimeric antibodies in her system, and Chapel was able to synthesize them into a cure before they set. Don't thank me, I know I'm good at my job, Chapel states. And that's a great line. I love the way they delivered that. And Mbenga tells Una that they all owed her their lives, but Una looks grim for a moment, and there was something she had to take care of. La'an sits alone in the recreation room, eating from a bowl of strawberries. As Una sits across from her, Una remarks that she packs a hell of a punch, and didn't mean it as a compliment. La'an asks what the penalty for striking a superior officer is, but Una can't seem to remember. Asking if they were still friends, La'an admits that part of what she said was a sickness talking, but part of it was her own hatred of augments. Given how she'd been treated being a descendant of Khan, and understanding why augments were banned on the Federation, as they had nearly destroyed Earth. Una acknowledges the damage augments had done, but Illyrians were different, seeking to collaborate with nature, not dominate it. Instead of terraforming, they adapted themselves, and Una sees nothing wrong with that. La'an counters by asking if Una really felt that way, why did she hide it, especially from her? Una admits that she's hidden it from a lot of people, but all she had ever wanted since first seeing the stars was to be in Starfleet. La'an knows, as Una had given her that dream too, and also had introduced her to strawberries as a comfort food. Una goes before Pike, now that he's back, and confesses that she's an Illyrian. She hid her augmentations, enlisted in Starfleet, lied about where she was from, and has committed offenses. She is resigning her commission and submitting herself for disciplinary action, asking only that her sincere desire to be in Starfleet be taken into consideration. Pike basically turns down the resignation. He doesn't care where she's from, and he lets her know that she's the best first officer in the fleet. Pike tries to stop her from going further, but Una warns him that she has broken dozens of regulations, lying to get into Starfleet, and if he shelters her, Starfleet would have to go after him. Pike says he would welcome that discussion, and tells her that he learned something on Hediment 9. Illyrians were severely misunderstood, and Una's actions during the crisis only emphasize that point. Una says that she only did her job, but Pike replies that she defies every stereotype the Federation had about Illyrians. When she asks what Starfleet would do when they found out, Pike chuckles and tells her to let him worry about Starfleet. Before she goes, he tells her to look into fixing the glitch in the transporter's biofilters. Una goes down to sickbay and talks to Mbenga, knowing that he didn't allow the medical transporters to be upgraded while the ship was in space dock. She suspects that's because Mbenga didn't allow them to do so, and reveals that Hammer's diagnostics showed that something was being kept in the pattern buffer. And whatever it was, he had to preserve it, even if it meant killing everyone else on the ship. Mbenga denies that was his intention and says it was an accident. Una demands to know what he was keeping in there and what could have been worth all their lives, and he replies not what, but who. He explains he was keeping his daughter in there, in the pattern buffer. She'd been diagnosed with sygnocemia a year earlier and was given 12 weeks to live. He notes that he, as chief medical officer aboard the Federation flagship, one would think he would be able to do something about it, but nothing he has tried has worked. He explained there was no limit to how long a pattern could be kept in the buffer, only having to materialize them regularly. In the buffer, Rukia did not age, and the disease did not progress.
I don't know, man. It felt a little weird that they introduced this thread like at the end of this episode. But I can recall when we watched the trailer, the last major one, we kind of talked about how to get demoted from chief medical officer to, just to whatever he was by the time McCoy got there. And I was just thinking tonight, watching this, like, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the reason.
I could see this real easily coming back.
Yeah. It just seems like, I don't know, it felt super out of place to me at the end of this episode.
It did. It was a big reveal that had no build-up, no hints, no foreshadowing, nothing.
Well, the only hint was he got freaked out when Hemmer was messing around with stuff.
Yeah, and that, maybe there should have been a mention of a daughter in a previous episode, or... to your point, a little bit of character development that could have been.
And then they're doing the old Scotty in the transport buffer.
Yep. Who was the guy that died in that was with him in there?
I don't recall. Yeah,
there was another person in with Scotty, and apparently if they had just brought him out every now and again, he would have lived.
Well, I mean, Scotty was in there for a long time, though.
Yeah. But Scotty's a genius, he can get that stuff to work. He's going to say goodbye to his daughter, but Una surprises him by saying, "No, we're going to give you a dedicated power source direct from the warp core to ensure like this nothing happens." She says she looks forward to meeting his daughter one day. After she leaves, Mbinga activates the privacy screen in his office and brings Rukia out of the buffer and picks up a story he was reading right from where he left off. Rukia protests that he had read that story 100 times, but the doctor jokes that perhaps the story's ending could change. In her quarters, Una dictates an entry in her log mentioning how people had things to hide, yet were revealing themselves. Mbinga had showed that what he was hiding, and Una had to admit the truth about herself to Pike, who had defended her. Yet she can't help but wonder, if she had not helped save the crew, would he have felt the same? What if she had not been one of the good ones? That's an ugly, ugly sentiment,
Yeah.
When will it be enough to just be Illyrian? She wonders before she asks the computer to delete the log entry. As the Enterprise departs, Hedem at 9 and goes to warp, and Mbinga continues to read from the story.
Yeah, even that last little bit, man, felt, I don't know, kind of heavy-handed.
Look, Star Trek does that. Star Trek plays with stuff that's kind of heavy.
But, no, I got that, but...
Yeah, but it did it did feel like a cudgel.
So, I, for the most part, enjoyed this episode, but it's definitely my least favorite out of the three so far.
Oh, yeah, I would say the same thing. I have noticed that when we do these, as much as I like them, I can still find things to pick apart about them, which, that's okay, because I can savage episodes of TOS and Next Generation.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And, it's just, I think part of being a Star Trek fan is complaining sometimes.
The people on Reddit and in the Facebook groups would definitely agree with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you ever go to a Facebook group, you'll see that everybody apparently does that.
They do it on Reddit, too.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I frequent Reddit way more than Facebook, although it seems at least a little tamer on Reddit.
Really?
The vitriol is still there. It's just said and slightly nicer. Not much, but slightly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I liked the episode. I enjoyed it. But out of the three, I'd say I found this one the weaker of three, even though it's not bad. I didn't think it was a bad episode,
No. I just wish they would stop doing these turnarounds, these red herrings and stuff.
I'm looking for a character named Red Herring to show up now.
Rest assured, she'll be from engineering.
Yeah, well, with a shirt, she should be. It'll be a Badmiral Red Herring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Like I said, the thing with Fake Kirk, I was just like, okay, you got me. But then this switch, not that I thought necessarily that La'an was genetically modified, but the stuff with Una just came out of left field to me.
Yeah, it was very Spanish Inquisition of them. Just nowhere, no hint, nothing. I guess that's my problem with both the reveals this episode. There was no foreshadowing of either one. Somebody should have seen a picture of Mbinga's family on his desk, or of his daughter and him on his desk. And, oh, who's that? Oh, that's my daughter, Rukia.
Yeah. And to be fair, he may have mentioned her in the first or second episode, but I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't recall it, which tells me that they didn't make a point of it. But yeah, you're right. There could be a mention out there. But then also like Una, not one hint that there was anything special about her besides she's a hell of an administrator. So anyhow, that's the Ghost of Illyria. And, that's a recap of the episode.
You sound so underwhelmed right now. It's so funny.
Well, there had to come a point once the show actually started where now it's just a show on TV.
Yeah, I think, again, like, not that I hate the format, but this snail's pace for character development, I think, is going to get super irritating, at least to me.
Yeah, it could, maybe that's what's going to happen, but... Now,
granted, I guess I can't necessarily say that happened this episode, because I would think finding out number one wasn't human was a super big leap, but it still didn't feel that way.
Yeah, I felt like it was until the end of the episode. And then,
yeah.
It didn't leave like oh God, what about if the Federation finds out, one of her junior officers has it out for her and he's calling the Commodore to say something, or,
Yeah, because Pike already nipped all that in the bud. He was like, yeah, let's go. I'll talk to anybody about it. Yeah. It's not a problem.
Which, that's cool. That shows the kind of commander they're sending Pike up to be, I
still want to know what the deal is with La'an. She's still a question mark.
Yeah.
Especially now.
Well, I was going to say, now that they've given away the character trait that I suspected.
And it wasn't hers.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's going to be a little different. Yeah, so, overall I liked it. But yeah. Hey, dog, did you have something to add? Okay. Okay. All right, just chill out for a second. Where are we headed next week, Chris?
Oh, La'an is causing a disturbance in a claustrophobic temple. Her cousin is eaten by a powerful robot, probably Robbie. With the help of a bitter xenobiologist, she must destroy a terrible invention in order to avert disaster and save her religion.
Really? Didn't pick her as the religious type. Okay.
Hey, man, this season's all about faith.
It sure seems that way, doesn't it?
Oh, wait, this isn't season 2 of Discovery. My bad.
Well, it's still a thread they appear to pick up from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, except in Discovery, they hit it a lot harder than they seem to be.
They shot a big old bat signal right at it the whole time, Yeah, that was a constant. I guess we'll get back to that when this season's over, though.
Yeah.
All right, guys, if you have any questions, comments, theories you want to run by us, hit us up on our website at strangenewtrekshow.com or follow the links in the show notes below, wherever you listen to this episode at. Please rate and review us wherever you listen to us. It is one small step for you, but a giant leap for the show. I want to give a special thank you to Miguel Esparza for writing the Strange New Trek theme song, and to William Harding for running our YouTube page. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to set your phasers to sun, and join us next time when we're on to the next planet of the week.